seize the moment.
Hello everyone. Today I'll be speaking with a former martial artist and current coach at Academy of Lions. He's your favorite gymnastics coach, David Yarema. Welcome, man. How you doing?
Good, buddy. Thanks for having me. This will be interesting.
I'm really excited to have you on the show. You know, you're a strong guy. I look up to you in terms of strength. You're skilled. You got a lot of gymnastic skills. Now you're here, right? So I'm really happy to have you on the show, man. So we met each other at the Academy of Lions, right?
Yeah.
What attracted you to that place in the first place?
Well, I saw you. Honestly, like, it was funny because I had like a issue with like work before. I was like unhappy where I was with work, and I remember that there's this one day where I guess I had like this sort of mental snap where I'm like, I'm not happy. I need to like pursue what it is that I want to do, which is training. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to be a trainer for years. So one night I go online and I try to find literally the scariest place or the most intimidating place in like Toronto for CrossFit or training in general. The Academy came up, and it seemed like the most intimidating to me. And the second I felt like intimidated, I was like, I need to be there.
What about it you think intimidated you?
The site was really well put together. They had the combine that was up, and it was the only gym that I've seen where it goes, there's a training combine to ramp on new coaches. And the first thought that came to me was, there's no way they're ever going to consider me.
Little did you know.
I feel like I sort of like forced myself into the gym though, so.
No, I mean, you got a lot of great skills, and I'm sure, we'll get to them. We'll talk about them in a bit. But I'm glad that, they added you to the roster, and I'm sure a lot of people can agree with me.
Thanks.
Your gymnastics class is one of the popular classes, obviously, and I feel like, there was a period, I wasn't even in there. There was a period where they had a gymnastics class, and then they didn't have it for a long time, and it was only when you came in that they actually started to reintegrate this, and I feel like you had a lot to do with that. How did that get started? Did they ask you to do that? Did you take the initiative, or like how did that sort of come about?
I sort of took the initiative with it because I found that gymnastics was a low barrier to entry, like sort of kind of program when it comes to like training, because like there are times where you can use weights as part of gymnastics, but gymnastics is being able to move efficiently with like your body without using like other external loads. I guess like the idea was brought up to me because like I've always picked up on gymnastic strength training or gymnastics training naturally, like very easily, just because I guess it was my body type. And so as I was doing it, I would like help people out here and there. And then someone actually, I can't remember who it was, but someone brought it up to me going, why don't you start teaching groups or teach groups of people like the basics? And I'm like, I'd rather teach a class and just dive right into the deep end.
Nice, man. Well, I'm glad you did, like I said, and I'm sure a lot of people are also glad that you did that. It's one of my favorite classes, and I know that I'm always bugging you for like for tips, especially on my muscle ups, because they come and go,
Yeah, they're frustrating.
Yeah, you're a coach at Academy. You've been a personal trainer for 9 years, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. But your fitness career started like in team sports, right? In hockey and soccer, right?
Actually, it started off when I left team sports and I went into an individual sport, and I was fighting for 15 years.
Oh, okay, cool. And that was in Taekwondo, right?
Yeah.
Nice. And you got pretty good at that, right?
I'd say I got pretty decent at it. I probably lost more than I won. But the talent pool that I was involved in was like really high. It was like really up there. Everyone on my team had like competed, won, or placed at nationals easily, would win provincials, would compete at like Pan Am qualifiers. Like it gone international. So I was like the little fish when I joined. Yeah. And I guess like when you're around people who are like that, you just that's the environment, and it breeds that kind of like excellence in sport.
Yeah, it just pushes you, right? Like you don't want to be the little fish for so long, right? But I think there's a lot to be said about being put in that position, especially in the beginning. Like, take something like gymnastics. I remember when I couldn't even get upside down, and I remember trying to get upside down, and you would tell me some things. You'd be like, all right, try this drill, try that drill. And like, it was frustrating at first, but now I can walk a few feet on my hands, and it's just like, all right, like it was only because I was such a small fish that I put in that effort and I put in that work. Otherwise, like I wouldn't have, you know what I mean? Like, so, I totally agree with you. Like having people around you to kind of push you, whether they do so intentionally or not, I think is just such a great thing to have.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you, like competing at that high level? Like how many competitions did you like take part in, and like what was the training regimen like?
Oh man. So unfortunately, I couldn't do as many competitions as like a lot of my teammates. So the
Yeah.
season in my sport doesn't really have an off season. Like there's
Okay.
maybe we get like a month and a half to 2 months off in the summer. It picks up back again in
Mm-hmm.
like September, August, and it goes. There's a tournament on average probably like every 4 weeks.
Okay.
So it's tricky because my main thing one was money.
Yeah.
I was still like working different jobs and trying. I paid for everything myself. Like I never really had help with it. And the second one was that I had a heart condition. I had a heart condition
Yeah.
for many years competing, and the reason it was hard for me to compete consistently was that I walked around naturally 75 kilos. Now for my height, my coach wanted me to fight at 63 kilos.
That's a
Not
lot.
gonna happen. It's a lot. So I would have to fight at 68, and to have a season where every 4 weeks you have to compete, it's not possible for me to healthily maintain that low body weight because there's been times where like my heart went nuts at a low weight and I just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
be very sparing with how I would when I would compete. But the training regime for Taekwondo is it's interesting because it's like more of a power speed sport with a high skill threshold.
Yeah.
And
But what does that mean? Like a high, like what do you mean by high skill threshold? Like elaborate on that.
high skill threshold mean that there's a lot of like, so there's some sports that I would consider more as like a physical performance sport where it means like there's limited technique and it's mostly based off the physical performance of a person.
Okay.
And then inverse, you have something that's high skill and then low physical performance, not taking away anything from them, but like you say archers. An
Yeah.
archer's going to get good at, and the only way they can get better is by practicing archery. Doing curls in the gym isn't going to get you better at archery. So Taekwondo is a high skill sport because you have to think about like what's involved in it. Most of the time you're fighting off balance, like you're accelerating off one foot to make contact. It's
Yeah.
rotational. There's easily at least 200 different skills and you're only going to use maybe 5 effectively. So you have to do constant fights, constant sparring simulations. You have to do a lot of conditioning, a lot of skill acquisition. So you're spending most time like just perfecting that, and whatever you can get for physical performance or training, it's like you're lucky if you get time for that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know that. Like, I think I did Taekwondo like most people, like when I was really young, and then they dropped it off real quick.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's really interesting, man, to know like sort of the intricacies of it, because I use those analogies too sometimes when I'm with patients, for example. I tell them, you know, like the skill piece versus the strength piece, right? Because a lot of times, and I'm sure you've come across this as a personal trainer, so people will be like, oh, I need to strengthen my glutes, I need to strengthen my core, and strengthen this, strengthen that. And I mean, it's not necessarily wrong, but sometimes it's more of a skill, right? Like you can have the world's strongest shoulders, but doesn't mean you can hold a handstand. You know what I mean? Like you need the skill to be able to do it. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
I never looked at Taekwondo like that, but it makes sense now that you put it that way. How I'm curious, like again, I don't know much about Taekwondo, so like how are competitions scored? Is it like per body part that you hit, or like how is it scored exactly?
I like to almost, because it's a little tricky to explain it. I'll explain it, but I'll give the first comparison is that you have to think of it very similar to boxing.
Yeah.
Boxing, even though professional boxing you can knock someone out and win off a TKO or a KO, it's a point-based system. So you have like certain hits that are effective or certain hits that aren't effective, and then the referees or like the judges will score how many shots are landed, how many actually made contact, what was the effectiveness, and that pushes like the weight of the fight. So Taekwondo specifically we have a chest guard and we have a helmet. There's other gear to protect us from like breaking stuff, but like kicking. So if I kick the chest guard, I can get the rules change. The rules have changed so much, but from what I understand, if I kick the chest guard, I get 2 points. If I do a rotating kick to the chest guard, I get 3. If I kick the head, I get 3. If I do a rotating kick to the head, I get 4. And I can punch to the body, and the punches will give me like I think 1 or 2 points now. Like I'm not sure. So it's interesting because you can't grab, you can't block with your legs, and so it's very like there's a lot of like accuracy and like very like very developed footwork involved in it. But like it's a point based system, but it's also you can knock someone out.
Yeah.
And because the thing is that there's more reward for doing more aggressive, highly acrobatic kicks to the head. I've seen like people like Cesar Like I've seen people like just black out from getting hit hard enough.
Oh
Like,
God.
yeah,
Have you knocked anybody out?
yeah. It's not the best. I remember my first knockout was I was 14 years old,
Oh my God.
and yeah, I remember seeing this guy. We were sparring in the gym, and he was standing. He was like in his 30s, but I can tell
my
for some reason I
God.
could tell that he was gonna he was gonna go in for a punch because he's very aggressive. And later in my style, I realized I'm really good against aggressive people. But like he was gonna come in, and I'm like, he's gonna punch me. I'm pretty sure I can kick him in the head. And before I could finish thinking, he went to go punch me, and I spun and I kicked him in the head. And I remember him getting hit, and just like
Oh God.
lights were off. Oh, dude, I felt honestly, I felt so bad, but at
Yeah.
the same time, it's like in the end, you get conditioned to it. You get
Yeah.
used to it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I feel like shit too, but then it's part of the sport, right? So fuck
Exactly.
that.
Like, yeah, no, exactly. So it's like, and there's different styles of fighters, but like like a rule of thumb that my friends and I would go by is, or my teammates, is that if you're at a really high level and you get hit with something ridiculous in the head and you get knocked out, chances are like you probably deserved it because you did something stupid.
Fair enough, I guess, because there's also defense involved, right? It's not just all attack. So, and like you said, you could probably be really vulnerable, right? I mean, I haven't done a lot of martial arts. I just started some jujitsu before the whole lockdown thing, and even there, like, you can really put yourself in vulnerable positions, right? So, yeah, kind of makes sense what you're getting
yeah.
at there. All right, so you knocked somebody out, felt bad, but obviously felt good. It's kind of a bittersweet moment. How many people did you knock out, like, in your career, would you say? Like, do you remember the number, or
3.
3? Okay.
I've knocked, but two of my 3 knockouts came to the body.
Oh wow, interesting. I've only knocked
Yeah.
out one person, and that's myself.
Oh my God.
the worst person to knock out, right? So after your competitive, or during your competitive years, you started transitioning into coaching, right?
Yeah, actually. So
Yeah.
coaching
And
for me. So
Yeah, like, what was that experience like, going from, like, training really hard, being competitive, and then making time to be a coach as well? Like, how was that transition for you?
it was hard. Like like an average day for me, including because I had a business too at the same time. An average day for me would start at like 6 or 7 a.m. I'd be out of the door by like 7.
Shit.
I'd work from usually from 8 a.m. till 5, and then straight from 5 o'clock I would drive wherever I was in Toronto. I would drive to like Etobicoke, and I would coach several classes, like, so 3 hours worth of like coaching, and then I would train myself after, and then I'd probably be home by like 12 or 1.
Holy
And that went on
shit.
for several years.
Holy shit, that's very little sleep, man.
Believe me, man. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess there are moments in life where, like, you have to, put the pedal to the metal and just grind hard. So I mean, it pays off. You know what I mean? Like, where you're at right now, I feel like it just shows, like, how much work you put in.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me that you look up to Bruce Lee, right? Like, he's one of, like, your inspirations, or he was, right? Is he still, like, an inspiration,
Yeah.
motivation for you?
Yeah. Once he was an inspiration, it's like forever an inspiration.
Nice. And, like, what about him exactly, like attracts you to, like, his, like, what motivates you about Bruce Lee?
Well, one of the things that I really liked was, because I read a lot of his books, or not all of them, but most of them, was that he started off as just like a regular martial artist, like under a traditional system. Mm-hmm. And then he started to sort of break away from a traditional system and search for something better. So he challenged norms. He challenged cultural norms. He challenged systematic norms. And then after realizing that he sort of was limited physically, he started looking, like, what he did was not very non-traditional. He went and looked towards bodybuilding, or just like lifting weights to increase, like, to build on his physique, which is like a very common thing people would say, is just to build the physique. Mm-hmm. And then he got addicted to, like everyone does who gets into the iron game.
Yeah.
He got into, like, lots of lifting and bodybuilding, and then his training skyrocketed.
Yeah. It's crazy what strength can do, like, as a foundation for almost any sport, right? And I feel like that's what humans are realizing, like, in the past, like, I don't know, 20 years or so. People are like, oh shit, like, let me actually do some strength training plus whatever hell else I'm really good at, Whereas before, like you said, traditionally it was like, no, let me just focus on my craft. Who cares about anything else, right? So
Yeah.
Very, very cool thing that he did, I think, to sort of lay down the groundwork for people like you, people like me who, you know, just have a skill set but want to make it even better. Like I think about soccer, for example. Like I remember being skinny, playing soccer, people just pushing me off the ball super easily. And then I started training, started lifting weights, getting stronger. My legs got thicker. Like I just had a better base of support. And then like I found it was like night and day. I could just protect the ball so much easier because I had extra weight on me, you know? So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's interesting. I never actually didn't know that about Bruce Lee. I obviously know of him, but I haven't got into too much detail
Oh,
of.
don't even get me don't get me started on him.
You were doing some rock climbing for a bit too, right?
Yeah, actually. So the rock climbing was actually came in at a very interesting time.
Why is that?
So I had left. So I was living with my family at the time. We had some conflict, and I left. So I made a willing decision to leave my family. And at that time, I had actually online found my father.
Oh wow.
So I decided to move in with him. And shortly, like after, I ended up having a severe heart complication. So I lost my job. I lost a lot of stuff. And what I did was that I couldn't like train taekwondo. I couldn't do a lot of stuff at that time. But what I ended up doing was focusing on like I need to do something for myself because I'm a busybody. Like,
Yeah.
so I was very interested. And this was like there's like a lot more to it, but briefly said, I was studying somatotypes or body types and talent acquisition in sport. So like certain body types are geared towards certain things.
Yeah.
So I'm built like a penguin. I have a very long body. I have short arms and I have short legs. But I've always had, from what everyone's told me, a really good grip. So when I moved in with my dad, surprisingly, he was like a 5-minute drive from one of Ontario's best indoor climbing gyms.
Interesting.
So I immediately went and I joined. And I was there 4 to 5 days a week, 3 to 4 hours a day. And I was climbing by myself, and I picked up on it. Like, surprisingly, if I was a climber as a kid, I probably would have been significantly better than I was at Taekwondo. But I picked up on climbing, like, ridiculously fast.
Was it bouldering or was it like with the rope and everything?
No, bouldering. I went straight
Okay.
to bouldering.
Nice.
And I had a lot of seasoned climbers who were there who would invite me. They'd be like, hey, like, how long have you been climbing? Because we became friends, and I'm like, 2 months. And they're like, what? And then they'd be like, hey, do you want to come on climbing trips? Do you want to come on ice climbing trips? Do you want to go on these trips? And I'm like, I can't. But it's like, it was interesting how, like, when they noticed that, they were like, come with us. And I'm like,
Yeah. That's cool, man. How long did you stick to the rock climbing for, and like what sort of like do you still rock climb or did you stop that as well?
recreationally. Like, I'll do it when it's, like, for fun. Like, I did climbing for... I was consistently climbing for about 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay.
And within the first year, I knew I was like, I need to compete at this.
Nice.
So
And you
the
yeah, how long did you compete for and how were the competitions?
I did one competition,
Okay.
and I dragged my friend into it who had no training, which was hilarious. But I competed in just like in regular open climb. It wasn't like they had a lot of high profile climbers there, but it was something. It's a current tournament called Tour de Bloc. So it's like you can climb for a week and I think like apply for it, or you can be climbing as long as you want. So it's open. And I placed like right in the half of the percentile
Nice.
with just under a year or about a year of climbing experience.
Yeah, it's not bad, man. And I'm assuming it's like a time thing or like a completion thing. Like if you complete it and then your score is the time. I'm assuming.
So there can be up to like 50 problems, and however many problems you compete, you get points. And the more difficult the problem, so problem 1 is like you can climb it asleep, and problem 50 is you need to be like some sort of half machine, half human to like climb it.
Yeah, some of those things are fucking insane. Like just gripping like underneath and you're kind of like parallel to the floor. Like it just drives me bananas, the kind of shit I see people do at the rock climbing gyms.
Yeah,
It's always fascinated me. Yeah, it's always fascinated me. Never ever got too deep into it, but you know, I do it recreationally once in a while.
I'll take you.
Let's do it up, man. I'd be happy to do it. Cass is into it too. How do you feel like this helped develop like a good foundation for the gymnastic stuff that you do now? Like in terms of the grip strength and in terms of using your shoulders and body to move around in like very random ways.
Yeah. So very interesting. It's a very good like connection. Is that a lot of climbers, if you see them, they're not big. A lot of climbers, more often than there's like one guy, Jan. His name is Jan, I believe. He's from Germany. He's massive. He's like a freak. But most climbers are pretty like light, and they're pretty lean, and they have to be because like the more weight you're carrying, their metabolic cost is higher.
Yeah.
So for me, what I noticed is a lot of climbers who are like seasoned climbers can rep out pull-ups. They have no problem developing like single arm grip strength. Their shoulders are super healthy. And then I've seen a lot of them do one arm pull-ups. Like the proportion of people in climbing who can do one arm pull-ups is like ridiculous compared to like anywhere else.
Yeah.
So what I found is that like neurologically they have the patterning of just being able to grip, and then they have a strong grip, and they're able to recruit and pull. And so what I did from that was I trained a very specific way for myself. And then when I started gymnastics, I realized that like my grip strength is like, again, like not normal. It's like really developed from years of construction and grabbing. So I got like mitts. But carrying over to gymnastics, I found it significantly easier than if I didn't do it.
Yeah. It's interesting. You talk about like the recruiting, that recruitment of like the grip and the pull thing. Something I've been talking to a few people recently about how strength actually works, right? Like how the nervous system just gets really good at something. Like you don't need to be completely huge as long as your body knows how to use the muscles properly to create that power. So yeah, very interesting stuff. Now you mentioned you had a heart condition, and you also mentioned that like did you lose your job because of the heart condition, or like how did that come about? Like you couldn't work because of the heart condition, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so what happened was, so quick little background is that I've known I've had a heart condition since I was 13.
Okay.
About 13, 14 years old. Once I started Taekwondo, I noticed that my heart would start fluttering and racing like crazy, and I thought maybe just my heart's beating hard. I didn't really notice it. And then I would explain it to my friends, and they're like, that doesn't sound normal.
Yeah.
And so I've been for as many tests as you can imagine, whatever. And so my doctor said it was just anxiety. I have big beef with that doctor. If I could have had this thing dealt with years ago. But so one day, because I would have bouts, it would go on, it would go off. One day when I was at work and I was doing this, I was refinishing hardwood floors. It acted up and it didn't stop. I had a resting heart rate of 180 for like 2 days.
What the fuck?
Yeah, my heart was going between 184 and like up to 300. Wow. So it actually capped at like 315 or 310 at Toronto Western. But because of that, I called the guy, and he's just like, well, what do you want to do? He goes, I don't know if you can work with your heart. And he's this old Italian dude. And I'm just like, Angelo, like I literally can't do anything right now. Like I'm terrified.
I see. Yeah. Crazy, man. So you're in the hospital, your heart's fucking beating at 300 beats per minute. And like, what did they tell you? What did they recommend? Like, did they put you on drugs, like surgery? What did they...
Oh my God. So I was grilled for a good 2 hours on probably like 7 different doctors in a whole clinic from the whole like clinic of doctors from UHN. And I was repeatedly asked, are you on cocaine? How much cocaine are you on? And I'm like, I don't take cocaine. They're like, it's okay if you take cocaine. How much cocaine? I'm not taking cocaine. Yeah. And it was like, it was unreal that they were just like, you're on cocaine. How much cocaine have you taken? I'm like, I'm not, like, I don't do drugs. Like, they're like, why can't you take cocaine? I'm like, because I have a heart condition, I'll die. like,
oh my God. That's crazy. Holy smokes.
But the thing is that, like, because of the heart condition that I had, it would fly up really high, but it would go to like the 300s and whatnot. But like my blood pressure and everything was fine. It was like 115/65. And then when it started to die down, it went back. My resting heart rate was like in the mid 40s or like high 40s. And then they're just trying to figure out, like, if he's not on cocaine, then what's going on? I remember one doctor clicking and goes, are you an athlete? I'm like, yes. He goes, how long? And I'm like, this many years. And he goes, that explains everything.
And did he elaborate on that? Like, what about you being an athlete sort of predispose you to this, or kind of like, how was it a factor?
So most people who have a sedentary lifestyle with something called SVT. So I had something called supraventricular tachycardia. It's a form of AFib, and people who have AFib are very prone for having heart attacks. Like it's a genetic thing. My father had it. So I've trained with this heart condition since I was 13 years old, like consistently. And they said that you're so used to it, you can tell when it starts, you know how to shut it off, your heart's conditioned to it. If I wasn't an athlete,
Oh,
different story.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy, man. Holy smokes. And yeah, it has to do with like the way that the nodes fire, right, in the heart. Like I don't know how much detail you know, but I remember like back to physiology days, like there's all the nodes in the heart that sort of help to run the current to make it pump in a specific way.
Yeah.
And so did they put you on medication or you had surgery recently too, right? I think.
Yeah. So I had my second surgery, and the
Yeah.
surgery went fantastic. So initially they tried putting me on they put me on a beta blocker, and they put me on something to like lower my heart rate.
Yeah.
And these two medications, and one of the side effects was you're gonna feel very like tired. And at this point, I was working for Good Life. So in the whole process of the surgery and stuff, I became a personal trainer at Good Life. It
Yeah.
was my first job there. And I remember a month in or 2 months in, I was like, I can't deal with this, and I just stopped taking the medication.
Because of the fatigue?
Yeah, I was like, I literally felt like a zombie. Like I'd sit on the
Uh,
couch and I just belonged on the couch, is what it felt like.
Crazy shit, man. And in the
Yeah.
surgery, what exactly did they do? Like, did they, yeah, like, do you know the specifics of what they did in the surgery?
Oh yeah, exactly. So they go through my femoral vein. So they obviously sedate me. They go through my femoral vein. They go up into the heart,
Yeah.
and then they have 3D mapping. Now the reason my first surgery got botched, it was terrible. It was because they had 2D imaging, so they had just an overlay, and they can sort of assume where it
Uh,
is.
yeah.
But now with 3D mapping, you can map the whole heart, and you know exactly where the electrical signal is. So this time they
Yeah.
saw it and fixed it in 5 seconds.
Holy shit. And how did they fix it? They just, like, what did they do to fix it?
They cauterize it.
Ah, interesting. That's interesting
Yeah,
how that works.
yeah.
And so what are your, or do you have any restrictions on training now, or is training kind of green light, or what's kind of the approach with it now?
They gave me the green light 7 days after the surgery.
Oh, wow. Fucking technology, man.
I know. It's like
So,
why couldn't we have it? And the technology that was needed for the surgery now came out a year after my first one.
oh, wow. Crazy how life works, man.
Yeah.
So now, like, how have you felt in terms of day to day and in terms of your training? Have you felt like it's affected it in any way?
Yeah. I don't have to. Like I started running again. I haven't run in over 9 years. Um, but I'd say like I could tell when it wants to start, but it doesn't, which is a weird ghost feeling because I've lived my entire life with it.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, so it's like a weird thing that your heart wants to feel like it wants to flutter, but it doesn't. As
Mm-hmm.
for training, I noticed that it's like sometimes in training, if I do cleans or if I do like really intense things that require like a lot of rebounding, it would act up and I'd have to stop. Like I just couldn't like handle it because I would like get lightheaded. I would start seeing white, and
Mm-hmm.
my training has been more on point since that surgery than it's been in years.
Wow. That's really good, man. I'm really happy to hear that, dude, because that's scary shit, man. That's scary shit to have that condition.
It's very difficult to find a coach who would understand that my main goal is to keep myself calm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, like, one of my coaches, like one of the guys, two of the people I worked with were fantastic because it's not, you can't, and I don't need like a world level coach. I need someone who would click with me. And one of my
Mm-hmm.
main things was, my heart would act up in a fight because if I got hit, it's a shock to the chest, it would set it off. So I had to be a very defensive fighter, but like I would have a
Yeah.
signal and I would do this to my chest, and my coach would be like, okay, I have to talk to him to guide him through the fight. So the main thing is those, like, the way I would fight in Taekwondo or play the game was I liked fighting really aggressive people because
Yeah.
I was really strong for my weight, but I'm really good at shutting people down. So I would
Mm.
love, my thing was bringing down the tempo of a fight. And when I'm at a very low tempo, I would usually be very explosive and it would work to my advantage,
Mm.
which is why
Interesting.
like I really learned how to deal with risk assessment, stress, anxiety, um, performing under pressure, and then being able to keep calm under pressure was like one of the strongest things that I've had by far.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I mean, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do the show was because sometimes all this adversity, like it didn't sound nice, you know. It's like if someone were to ask you, "Hey, do you want to have this heart condition?" You know, you'd be like, "Fuck no, I don't want to have this heart condition." Like it sounds horrible, you know what I mean? But now you're telling me like, "Hey, like I've actually learned all this shit from it," you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Like the so that would that and the one thing that came. the most not shocking to me, like almost like a 180 for me. Like when you were talking about coaching and going from it competing, was that I had to coach an athlete who had severe asthma brought on by bouts of anxiety.
Interesting.
She can feel it when it would happen.
Yeah.
And I would have to coach her to calm her down. And then it took me about 2 years to one point where she would never be able to finish a fight ever. I remember the day that she finished her first fight, because in the middle of the fight, instead of taking her puffer and stopping, she refused her puffer, calmed down for 20 seconds, went back in and finished and won.
That's crazy, man. It's crazy what the mind can do. And like, how did you coach her through this? Like, what kind of cues or what kind of things did you guys work on to get her to like learn to control this a little bit better?
I remember when I would coach her, I would tell her to like, I would stop her, I would center her focus on me. So I'd get like really close to her level. And I'd be like, I'd ask her, I wouldn't tell her how she's feeling. I'd be like, how are you feeling? She would tell me, like, it's okay to feel like that. There's nothing wrong. What do you want to do? So I would give her the choice. I would never force her to do something, but I would encourage her when she's in the moment to do what she wanted to do. So if she chose to keep on fighting, I'd be like, it's okay. Move left, move right, engage, don't engage. It's okay. Go in. And so I would be like really reassuring. And then I would always tell her at the end of the fight, like, I don't care how you performed. If you won, you lose, doesn't matter. What I care about is if you can tell me how good, what something you did good and something you did bad and what you want to improve on. And like, how did you feel about the fight? So when you're dealing with youth athletes, as someone with an issue like that, you always have to get down to their level and talk to them and understand them as a person and not be above them and talk to them like you're someone who's like above them and like telling them that they need to do something or do better. And when you're at a level with somebody and you're understanding and you're making them feel valued, they will always respond to you and trust you. And when you can build trust with someone, you can get like anything, and you can almost like, it opens up so many doors.
Yeah, 100%. I like what you said there, because I feel like that's just like one of the things that I like to focus on in life is I like to, approach people like you said, like we're equals, you know what I mean? Like, sure, I might have like a little bit more knowledge in this or that, or maybe I'm your coach, or maybe I'm, my title is like, puts me at a station above you, but really like, you don't have to treat the person that way. You know what I mean? Like, so I like that you have that approach. All right. So, I mean, we're about to wrap things up. So just to let people know, like if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to train with you, or anything like that, like how can they get in touch with you?
So I have 2 pages. I have my Instagram at David Yarema, or I have like my own separate training platform called Strength Collective Toronto on Instagram. And
awesome.
You can reach me at either or of them, and I usually respond pretty fast with it.
Sweet. And you train gymnastics, obviously, but like just general training, like what kind of things would you help people with?
So I have 3 systems I go by. I have my own version of how I would do GPP, which is where it's just general physical preparedness, which is like different modalities, complexes, powerlifting mixed with gymnastics, and then I strictly have a powerlifting program, and then I have strictly a gymnastics strength training program. Not to confuse with gymnastics, you're not doing backflips.
Yeah, gymnastics sound like the rings, the bar, and handstands and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, lots of calisthenics, lots of bodyweight stuff.
Nice. Awesome. All right, Dave. Well, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Nice having you on the show. I learned a lot about you, about Bruce Lee, about the heart. So thanks so much, man, for being on the show. And hopefully we do this again soon.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. Problem, dude. And honestly, I'd love to do this again.
Yeah, same. I know there's a lot more. I like to keep it short to keep people kind of guessing and be like, oh shit, like I want to know more about that or whatever. So yeah, there's definitely more we can dig deep into. So thanks for being here, man. And we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, brother.